Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. I hope you've had a great weekend. It's Sunday night, time for some On the Beat, a little Sunday night chat with you, talking college football, what we learned over the weekend, what's happening around the SEC, how it affects Georgia. Certainly Georgia is moving forward with some of their plans. We learned Friday that there may be a plan to bring Georgia back on campus and quarantine the coaches and the players together, seeing some NCAA statements about how they want college football to look when it comes back. Looks like July is going to be a very big month if things continue on the path that they are on right now. Obviously, the coronavirus, COVID-19, we're all dealing with it. You know, we try to get away from it, but the reality of it is it's smack dab in the middle of our faces every day as we all choose whether we go out in public or we don't go out in public, and what do the tests say, and what does the data say, and what numbers do you trust, and what's the read on it. It's awful blurry right now. It's awful confusing. It's awful frustrating, but it's something that we have to deal with as we look to get back into our jobs and as we look to get back into the sports world, because without sports, life's just not the same. I mean, we're now learning just how much we miss athletics in our daily life. I know that I am. I miss it. Obviously, I'm a sports writer, but even beyond that, you know, you think about how we're inspired or how we draw energy or how those guys charge us up or those girls, depending on the sport, how those athletes charge us up, the lessons that we take from it, how it's ingrained in our society as Americans. It's a part of what we are. It's a part of what we do, the competition, the thrill of it. We're raised on it. Most of us have played some form or fashion. We all have our memories to draw on, the lessons, life lessons that we've learned. So I'm going to try and wade through some of that without getting too heavy, just to kind of give you my read and my thoughts on what the NCAA is saying and how I think college football is going to look when the season starts. Now, obviously, this is a moving target. How I think it's going to look now could change. I've been pretty consistent thinking that there's going to be some restriction with fans in the stands, and I believe that now more than ever, and I'll get to that in a minute. I do kind of want to reflect on a video that I saw of Matt Stafford, Georgia quarterback, working out with DeAndre Swift and Isaac Nauta. And here's where I got to have a confession, right? So even though I'm born in Mobile, Alabama, raised in Michigan, never a Lions fan. I didn't dislike the Lions. I was just indifferent to them, right? For whatever reason, you know, remember those plastic helmets, those little plastic football helmets, and you could go to the store and put a quarter in the machine and turn the knob, and the little plastic helmet would fall out. So my story is, I was about 7 years old, and I went to the store with my Uncle Bud. Like, everybody's got their favorite uncle or aunt, right? Everybody's got that favorite relative that's just undefeated. Well, mine was my Uncle Bud. So Uncle Bud, for whatever reason, I wasn't even watching football when I was into baseball, Cubs baseball and all this, right? So he takes me to the store and puts the quarter in the machine and turns the knob, and the Denver Broncos helmet falls out. Thank goodness. It could have been a lot worse than that. And I enjoyed watching the Broncos and being a fan, because you could be a fan just by watching TV. The NFL was on every week. The Broncos were an afternoon game, often in the 4 p.m. slot. John Madden seemed to call it a lot. Saw a lot of Raiders and Broncos games. Dan Fouts would do the chart, whatever. So, Broncos guy. But Lions was like, okay, that's cool. And then in college, I covered the Lions a little bit. Barry Sanders was there. Every time he touched the ball, I was at the edge of my seat, literally every time. Number 20, because he was magical. There'd be nothing there, and he'd jump to the left and he'd jump to the right, and suddenly there'd be a little crease, and he'd run 18 yards and gain 3, because the Lions were awful. But Barry Sanders was fantastic, and so what a great year or two that was for me in college, getting to go cover the Lions home games, right? But I never really took to the Lions. I just didn't care, because they didn't care. You don't care, I don't care. You know, that's when people go, Mike, wait a minute, you grew up by Michigan State, 20 miles away. You went to school there. How are you not the biggest Spartan fan? I'm a alum of there. Sure, I want to see Michigan State do well, but growing up, they didn't care. You don't care? I don't care. They didn't recruit their local community. They didn't put money in their stadium, and they were awful. So what's a 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old kid going to do? He's going to sit at home and watch ABC and SEC football, because they cared. And I noticed that as a kid, they still care. And that's why I grew up to be an SEC writer. Because they care. Because you all care. Look at this. It's madness. It's Sunday night. There's over almost 300 people watching us talk football, because it's Georgia and we care. We really care. So, anyway, where was I going with this? Matt Stafford. So Matt Stafford's been a guy that I saw him play at Georgia. I covered their game against Hawaii. Fabulous quarterback. But I didn't feel like Matt Stafford had a team of dudes that had his back. And I didn't know if Matt Stafford really inspired. Was Matt Stafford the leader that it would take to win a Super Bowl? I mean, he had Calvin Johnson, he had Megatron, and he didn't win. Has he even won a playoff game yet? At some point, you keep changing all the components, and the consistent is Matt Stafford. Now, to be fair to Matt Stafford, the Lions were losers before Matt Stafford. But now, Matt Stafford's there, and he can't win. I told my friends there, Lions fan, look, why are you guys going crazy over this? This franchise doesn't care. Matt Stafford can't get over the hump. You know what? I think this year he will. And I think the Detroit Lions are going to win a playoff game this year. And the reason why I think they're going to win a playoff game is because the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs really blew it. When they passed on DeAndre Swift, they missed out on a franchise guy. And if DeAndre Swift wasn't already motivated to be a star, it doesn't take much. I'm going to tell you, it doesn't take much to put a chip on DeAndre Swift's shoulder. This is a tough guy from Philadelphia. The essence of Swift is toughness. This is a guy who works out like a maniac. You've seen his dad. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And now you have embarrassed him. You have told him he is not a first-round running back. The Dolphins have told him they didn't care enough. They probably lied to him and said they were going to pick him. That's what happens to other backs. The Chiefs, Mahomes says, I want Edwards-Helaire. Okay, Mahomes, let's remember that. I already looked on the schedule. The Lions don't play the Chiefs or the Dolphins this year, unfortunately. But let me tell you what. Swift is lit. And think about it. If you're Stafford, the passing game's decent. You know, the Lions, I think it's been like 13 years since they've had a 1,000-yard back. Or maybe, no, 2013 was the last 1,000-yard back. And they haven't finished in the top half of the NFL in rushing in like forever. And here comes Swift. Now, I don't think Swift is going to run for 1,500 yards. I don't think he's going to be that dude, but what he is going to be is a little safety valve. Stafford back to pass, receivers covered downfield, blip into the flats to Swift. DeAndre Swift with space. Now think about this. The last time that we saw DeAndre Swift with space was 2017. Remember when Nick and Sony were in the backfield and Wims was on the perimeter, and at the end of the year Ridley showed up? That's the only time he showed up, it seemed like, was the end of the year against Alabama. I don't know what happened to Riley Ridley in other big games, but but anyway. And what did Swift do? You were, oh my gosh, look at DeAndre Swift, a freshman. All right. Now the Swift you saw in 2018 didn't have a healthy offseason. Him and Holyfield split carries. He didn't start all the games. Remember, he had the groin surgery and all that, or the sports hernia surgery. Wasn't really 100%, and still had that stretch in November when he like ran over everybody and was averaging like 9 yards a carry in the month of November in 2018 when he was healthy, okay? And then this year, he didn't have a pass game to work with. The field was really never spread. Once Cager was out, it was over. And he's running into 8-man boxes and still finishes like with the second highest yards per carry in SEC history of guys with 4. Swift. Stafford has Swift. And Isaac Nauta, and I'm not going to downplay Isaac. I know Isaac was a 7th-round pick, and I know there were people that didn't even think he was going to make the team. I said boldly, Nauta's going to make the team. They said, Grip, they drafted another tight end ahead of him. He's a 7th-round pick. He's on the practice squad. I said, listen, Isaac Nauta's a pro. He's a pro. The guy knows how to handle his business on and off the field, and he is the consummate pro, and he will make the Detroit Lions. I don't care what number he ran at the combine. You go back and look at Nauta's career with Georgia. He was a clutch player that came up big when he was needed. Seeing him and Swift work out with Stafford makes me believe that the Detroit Lions are going to get over the hump and win a playoff game this year. And that's my prediction. Now, there's some other predictions out there, and I don't even know what to think about this. Barrett Sallee is a guy that I've known for a while, and I've made some predictions, and he's killed me on Twitter for them. And now he's making a prediction, and I'm not going to kill him for it, but I'm going to tell you about it. He went on Twitter tonight and said that Tennessee is going to win the East in the next 3 seasons. What? I mean, really? Is Georgia and Florida just going to suddenly... I mean, you talk about a leap of faith. That's unbelievable. Based on commitments in the month of May? Listen, I've covered Tennessee. I was there the last time Captain Butch Jones and the Volunteer Navy sunk in it was 2017. I was there. Rolling into the season, they got the #1 recruiting class in the SEC. And Butch has just got to survive. He just had to survive that season. That's all he had to do. Didn't happen. Got killed. Georgia, boom, 41-0. I was at that game. I said, oh my gosh. I couldn't believe it. Here comes Georgia rolling into Neyland. They're going to checker the stadium. Peyton Manning's going to be there. And I'm just like covering my eyes like, do you understand what the hell you're doing here? You're going to checker the stadium and acknowledge Peyton Manning with this Georgia team coming in after what happened last year between the hedges? Are you crazy? I mean, that's like waving the red flag in front of the bull. What are you thinking? Checkering the stadium for this Georgia team with this Tennessee team? And Peyton Manning, what are you nuts? What do you, 41-0. And I said, that is the best. That team right there is going to win now. I remember telling Brandon Adams, he'd have me on the show every week. I mean, that Tennessee team's the best, or that Georgia team, they're the best in the country. And they were. And they should have won it, and Alabama still shouldn't have got in the playoff. You shouldn't get in the playoff when you lose your last regular season game by 10 points. That shouldn't happen. But they did. They were the best in the playoff. Whatever. It happened. Back to Tennessee. There is momentum there. Philip Fulmer is a champion. He's a guy that I covered. I could write a book on Philip. I was at his open practices, know him like the back of my hand. Complete respect for Philip Fulmer. At one point dominated Georgia. Mark Richt came, kind of swung it back, turned into a real dogfight. We've seen Tennessee and Georgia kind of kick each other and cost each other and spoil for each other. But I got respect for Fulmer. Bottom line is they've got a former football coach as an AD that knows what the heck he's doing. Helps Jeremy Pruitt out tremendously. He's helped Jeremy hire T. Martin. He's helped Jeremy hire former running back Jay Graham. They're a team. Make no mistake about it. Jeremy Pruitt's not doing it on his own. I'm not saying Jeremy's going to be a college football Hall of Famer, but he is working with a college football Hall of Famer in Philip Fulmer, who has control of the budget and is right there with the co-pilot anytime things get bumpy. And if you don't think Philip Fulmer's a part of the success, then you haven't been paying attention. So good for Jeremy Pruitt, good for Philip Fulmer, good for the Tennessee fans. Got a lot of respect for that fan base. You know I was there a long time. But to go ahead and say that in May, they're going to jump past this juggernaut here in Georgia. And that's what Georgia is. Georgia is a football juggernaut. It's not like, Georgia was good before. Georgia's kind of always been good. When is Georgia football has never really been bad. It's always been a respectable program. I'm going to go ahead and share this on another page right now. So forgive me. I'm going to take my eyes off the screen while I share this link because I don't want people saying, oh, man, you were talking bad about Tennessee behind their back. No, I'm not. I'll be honest. I'll tell anyone. I'm not talking bad about Tennessee to begin with. I'm just going to say, let's be realistic. That's what I'm going to say. And if Tennessee's number 3 in the nation in recruiting right now, that's great. But May is not signing day. We've got 7 months until signing day. And that's a long way off. And I looked at Tennessee's schedule because I said, well, I don't just want to throw this out there. Maybe there's something to this. I mean, Tennessee did win the last 6 games of last season. They got some momentum. I get it. They got to play at Oklahoma this year. Could they win at Oklahoma? I don't know. I don't know much about the Oklahoma quarterback, Spencer Rattler. I haven't watched QB1 for season 3 yet. Maybe they will. Butch Jones darn near beat Oklahoma the year they were in the college football playoff, dialing it back. So maybe they will. Here's my problem with Tennessee. I don't think they've got a quarterback. I think Jarrett Garantano is average. Nice kid, covered his family. He's worked hard, man. He's been through so much. And you talk about Tennessee quarterbacks, and you've seen what Brian Maurer, I mean, my goodness, there's just a lot of pressure up there, and they've been through a lot. But I don't think they're good enough at that position, and they lost some great receivers. So Tennessee, at best, a 7-win team. Do I think with 7 wins that Tennessee can sign a top 5 class? No, I do not. I don't think they're going to lose it. I don't think they're necessarily going to, the ship's going to go down like it did for Butch Jones and Jeremy Pruitt's going to get fired. I don't see that scenario unless they were to somehow lose to Troy and Vanderbilt, and I don't see that happening. I do think they're stable. But as far as saying that they're going to beat Florida and Georgia in the next 3 years for the East, that to me is a reach. That suggests that Georgia and Florida are going to crash. And I know Georgia fans don't want to hear it. Florida is getting better. I don't think Florida's as good as Georgia right now. And I just don't see Georgia falling off, folks. I just don't. I could be wrong here, but you take a look at Georgia's recruiting classes, and it's 1, 2, and 1 in the last 3 years. Those guys just aren't going to suddenly vanish and forget how to play football. And if anything, Georgia with that 81, and I drove by it on campus yesterday. That $81 million football building is going up. The project is ongoing. Very soon, in the next year or two, Georgia is going to have facilities that are on par with Tennessee to recruit to. Because right now they're not. They're not on par with Tennessee. They're not on par with LSU. This is according to 24/7. They're not on par with South Carolina. They're not on par with Kentucky. Georgia's facilities ranked 8th in the SEC. Okay, and I know Georgia fans get mad and go, "Oh my gosh, whatever you said." It's, you know, the McGill Society and their donations have enabled Georgia to take this step and get on a level playing field with these other schools that have better facilities. And these facilities, now you might say, "Well, you know, a facility, does it really make it?" I think it makes a difference. Ask Clemson. Did it make a difference for Clemson? I think it did. I think that's how Clemson kind of surged ahead of the rest of the SEC. I think that's how Clemson broke Florida State's back. I think that's why Jimbo Fisher left Florida State. Facilities. I think facilities is why Jimbo Fisher has a shot at A&M, and let's keep an eye on them this year. But all this talk about Tennessee and the complete overreaction, in my opinion, by Barrett, and if I'm wrong, Barrett, you're the man, and I'll give you all the credit in the world if Tennessee wins the East in the next 3 years. But what you're telling me is that means Georgia or Florida won't. And that's the problem that I have. Not that I don't respect Tennessee. They may be good enough, but you're telling me that Georgia or Florida won't be good enough to stay ahead of Tennessee? That's where I kind of wonder about it a little bit. So that was what was out there tonight. That's got people buzzing. You know, and just to put it into perspective about where recruiting rankings are at, Alabama's 54 right now with 3 commits. Are we going to predict that the Alabama program is going to take a dive because they've only got 3 commits? Because that's about as logical as saying that Tennessee is going to win the East in the next 3 years because they've got 16 commits the first week of May, which is what Barrett Sallee of CBS did. And to his credit, I'm talking about his prediction. It's his job to throw it out there when he's got to take. I respect it. I'm not calling him any names. I'm not saying that he's a great analyst. I think he does great work. People come at me when I have opinions. I said on Paul Feinbaum's show that Georgia was not going to go away and that they were going to beat Florida last year. And Paul ended the segment doing the gator chomp at me. Everybody remember that? I remember that. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, Feinbaum just blew me out of the water with the gator chomp. If Florida wins this game, I'm going to look like Joe Homer. That's another thing that's kind of interesting. So when you cover a program, you see everything. You see the good and you see the bad. You see the warts. And for a long time, it was almost as if to be a good beat writer, you couldn't really like the team you covered. You couldn't really say good things about them, right? Because if you did, that means you were Homer. Or if you picked Georgia to win, it means you're a Homer. Or I picked Tennessee in 2016 to win the East. They had this record-setting offense. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? I picked him because I thought Josh Dobbs was amazing. And he was. He had that little surge. I don't even know how to explain Joshua Dobbs as a college football player. He was the best quarterback in the league that year. I picked Georgia because they're the best team. I don't pick them because, hey, go Bulldogs, right? Or, hey, Kirby, I'm your beat writer because I pick you to win. Listen, man, that ain't how it works. That ain't how. I'm the guy in the press conference asking Kirby, why are you trying for a field goal when you're up by 2 scores on Auburn? And he goes, why not? And I go, because you had a comfortable lead. And he says, that's the back and forth. It's not ugly. It's not mean. I question Kirby Smart. That's my job. I don't question him because I don't think he knows what he's doing. I ask the questions that I think fans want to know. Fans want to go, man, I wonder if Kirby did that because Gus said this after the game 2 years ago. Maybe he did, but maybe Kirby's not going to say that. What I really think happened in that game was that they put the fake in, and Kirby's a big believer that you put these plays in and you use them. And you do everything you can to win. And by him calling those plays as a coach, he's sending the message to his players, I got your back, I believe in you, we're going to do everything possible to win this game. And it creates a mentality. And that's why Kirby Smart calls fake plays. They don't always work. Georgia fans are going, oh, please don't talk about Kirby's fake play. Looked pretty good against Baylor. And it keeps the guy sharp on special teams because they know, hey, man, Coach Smart, he'll pull that out anytime. He's fearless. And I think he is fearless. We'll see how that changes. Hopefully, for Georgia's sake, they won't be in a position where they have to run fakes anymore. But anyway, right now, if you look at the recruiting landscape, number 1, Ohio State with 17 commits. Tennessee's number 3 with 7. North Carolina's number 2. Are we going to pick them to beat Clemson? I mean, come on. Let's be real here. Florida's number 4, but somehow Tennessee's going to pass them in the next few. 16 Georgia, 17 LSU, 54. These are recruiting rankings. They're fluid. They change. Players' rankings go up. Players' rankings go down. I think the reason that Georgia and Alabama are sitting back there, Georgia with 7 commits, Alabama 3, because they can. Because they can. Because they don't want to take a guy that they later have to say, you know what, actually, no, go away. They don't want to do that. You know, you see that happen in other programs. You know, guys will decommit and you'll go, geez, I wonder why he decommitted. Well, maybe because he didn't really have an acceptable offer. One of the things that a lot of programs do to get ahead or to catch up, and I saw this at Michigan State. I saw it at Michigan State. Michigan State's strategy was to offer everybody early. Be the first guy to get him an offer. That means something to a kid. So they go out there and they throw a ton of offers out there when a kid's a sophomore. They work their butts off to get them on their campus first. It's all about, you know, the unofficial visit has become the official visit. This is what you do to have an aggressive strategy. It's going to get messy. There's going to be guys you're going to have to send away later, guys you have to cut. It's going to be messy, but, you know, you'll worry about it later. Right now, you wrap your arms around everybody you can, and you hope you can hold on when Georgia and Alabama decide, you know what? Maybe I do want that Tennessee commitment after all. Hey, Joe, remember you didn't have an offer last year when you committed to Tennessee? Coach Smart's decided you got one now. You change your mind? I don't know. How's the season going? Well, let's see. Georgia's ranked in the top 5, and Tennessee just lost to him by, 3 touchdowns. I'm just saying, that's the scenario. How does that work, right? Saw it happen, Cade Mays. Cade Mays was a Tennessee guy. He was recruiting all the guys. Come to Tennessee. Stay in state, guys. And what happened to Cade Mays in 2017? Tennessee started losing, and Cade Mays said, out of here, went to Georgia and competed for a national title. Now, Cade Mays has come full circle, and he's back at Tennessee with his little brother because Georgia wasn't going to take his little brother because his little brother wasn't good enough to play at Georgia. So Cade Mays went back to Tennessee because Tennessee was going to take little brother because now that opens the door to get Cade. And this is how recruiting works. Georgia's got guys on their roster that were takes to get another guy, right? I mean, you can look at the roster. You know some of the guys. You know some of the guys, you go, is that receiver really that good? Or is he just on the roster because he was teammates with, yeah, probably. Okay, this is how recruiting works. This is the real world. It's ugly. The real world is going to change. The real world is changing. The real world has changed. Newsflash, right? Welcome to Logan Booker. Enjoy doing his Athens show. I'll be up and ready for it at 8 a.m. tomorrow, Logan. Better have that song I like ready to play when I come on the air. I'm hearing now the Atlanta Falcons aren't going to play in London, right? They were supposed to play in London. No London game. That's the rumor. The NFL schedule is supposed to be out this week. Smart move. Okay, so what is Notre Dame and Navy waiting for? Because they're supposed to play in Ireland on August 29th. Who are we kidding here? Just cancel that game now. There's no reason to travel international on August 29th. If you make provisional plans right now to play it in South Bend or play it in Annapolis on one of the team's campuses, everybody's happier. Look, I'm sorry. I know there's some big boosters and a lot of money went into this, but this ain't about the boosters and the money right now. At least that's what you're telling us. You're telling us it's not about the boosters and the money. Then make a decision that backs that up and pull the Notre Dame game out of Ireland and say, look, we're not going to travel internationally. Because as much and as optimistic as we are that things are going to change, do we really believe that things are going to change that much, that we're going to be comfortable flying to Ireland for a football game that doesn't have to be in Ireland? It doesn't have to be there, okay? It doesn't have to be there. So if the NFL is going to pull Atlanta Falcons out of London, then I expect to see Notre Dame and Navy pull their game out of Ireland. Let's just make some responsible decisions and get off the ego bus, okay? Let's do that. Let's put our egos aside and let's start making some responsible decisions right now so that there's a much greater possibility that these games can take place. Because flying to Ireland doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I'm a little bit on the fence about this Alabama-USC game in Arlington. Because you might go, wait a minute, Griff. Georgia plays their opening in Atlanta. Now, I don't know how Virginia feels about that. But whether they're playing in Atlanta or whether they're playing in Athens, they're probably flying. They're not busing either one. Georgia Bulldogs are busing to Atlanta. Just like next year when they play Clemson in Charlotte. They're busing to Charlotte. I have a different issue with neutral site games. And you guys know this. And I'm passionate about it. Georgia should be playing all their home games in Athens. They shouldn't be playing in Jacksonville, and they shouldn't be playing these neutral site games. Not when you got a stadium like Sanford Stadium. You should be playing home and home. You should be taking care of number one and keeping this money in the doggone community. Because right now, I can tell you, Athens could use some money. They could use some better facilities right now. instead of putting all that money in Jacksonville, this community right here could use some money right now. Instead of this Jacksonville game in Florida, look, that was great. There was a time when it made sense and it was fun and everybody. Who wants to fly to Jacksonville this year? You looking forward to that? Looking forward to staying in a hotel instead of sleeping in your own bed? How nice would it be for Georgia to have Florida at home this year? How much would that economy benefit from Georgia, Florida being in Georgia this year? There was a time for it. It's gone. If it goes to 2023, that's what it's signed through. All the power to the higher-ups and the boosters that wanted it. But it does not benefit Athens. It does not benefit the Georgia student-athletes. And Kirby Smart's told you it doesn't benefit him. So who are we doing it for? The people on TV that want to go, oh, hey, look at the crowd. It's 50-50. Who gives a damn? Watch the bowl games. It's the regular season. How about a home field advantage? How about the satisfaction of beating Georgia or beating Florida in the swamp? The players want it, okay? They've told you that. All right, done on my Jacksonville rampage. Didn't mean to go that far. Even had a mild curse word in that exchange. I get a little fired up about it because I think Athens deserves better, okay? I walked downtown. I saw all those restaurants closed. You know, I wondered if they're going to open back up because how many home games do they got? One less than the other SEC teams to work with? I wondered, is that bar going to open up over there, the one you used to go to in college? How about the Last Resort, the restaurant that we all love with the best cake in the world? Is that going to open back up, right? How about World Famous, where, you know, REM used to play and eat their food? And how about Georgia Theater? How's that going to do with one less home weekend? Are they going to open back up? Can they afford it? Or are we too busy paying for Jacksonville to grow and build? And they have an ocean 365 days a year, so don't tell me they need the game. Gosh darn it, I didn't mean to get on that ramp. It just upsets me. So how much, moving on, I've got a little list here. I watch Brandon Adams. Brandon does a little show sheet. I'm learning from the pro. BA does Dog Nation Daily every day right here at 10 a.m. He does a tremendous job. Been doing it for years. A lot of you are big fans of BA, and you're watching me going, hey, okay, I'll listen to you, Mike, because BA does a good job. I appreciate that. So how much does it cost? I read an article on ESPN tonight. Are you ready for this? $12 billion of lost revenue right now. $12 billion has disappeared because of sports cancellations and sports being suspended. $12 billion. I haven't done the math. I haven't looked it up, but that's probably greater than the GDP for how many countries in the world. $12 million. And you know what they're saying? They're saying that if football doesn't take place, it will double. $24 billion will be lost if there's not a football season. People go, oh, well, you know, you don't really need football. Yeah, you do. You do. You do need football season. We all need football season. So, how do we do it safe? All right, well, let me tell you something. How do you not do it safe? Or how do you stay safe if there's not football? Are you any safer? Are you any safer? Is the world a safer place without kids playing college football games? No, you're not. Well, wait a minute. It's got to be safe when they go back to campus. Is it safe in their home communities right now? Is it safe for them to go to the mall when it's opened up? Is it safe for them to get a haircut? Is it safe for them to go to the family picnic and see relatives they haven't seen for years that are coming from 4 and 5 states away and having picnics with 200 people? Is that safer than practicing every day with guys on campus that you're pretty much quarantined with? You say, what do you mean quarantine? Well, you're already quarantined. We're talking about now Georgia coming back and living in a hotel with their coaches. You go, wow, that's a really novel concept. You're going to quarantine the team, and you're going to put them in these facilities, and they're going to all work out together, and the coach and the players, and yeah, and then what? Okay, and then what are you going to do? You're going to go to the same weight room? Already do that. Going to go to the same training table? Already do that. Going to go to the same academic support center? Already quarantined. Student athletes are already quarantined from the rest of campus by the very nature of what they do and how the facilities work. Now, will they be back in the classroom? Sure, they'll be back in the classroom. Yep. But how much? I don't know. How much was Joe Burrow in the classroom the last 2 years? The LSU quarterback, the grad transfer, he took classes online. You're going to see more of that. One of the changes we're going to see is more online classes. And not necessarily so somebody else can do their homework, and not necessarily because of COVID-19, but just from a time management standpoint with what you are asking these student athletes to do. How much time do they really have? Let's be real. to walk across campus with a backpack on their back and go to Class A, Class B, Class C. Because remember, their day starts at 5 a.m. It starts at 5 a.m. with an hour and a half workout. And then they go to the training table. And then they go to the training room and get treatment for their knees. And then they go to Class A, B, and C and walk across campus. And then they better be dressed and on the practice field by 4 o'clock. And by the time they get out of there at 6, and then they got team meetings to watch film, when do these kids have any time? How realistic is it to make them jump through? You go, well, no, wait a minute. Wait, it doesn't have to be that way? Really? Because the last time I checked, coaches get fired if they don't win games in 3 years. They don't even get through a cycle anymore. You better win games. You better win football games. Oh, and you better graduate players. Oh, and at Georgia, they don't have the North Carolina rule in effect where, well, we got some classes that nobody has to go to, so therefore it's not an advantage for us. If nobody has to go, then the student athletes really aren't getting in it. How much cockamamie was that? What a bunch of garbage. I'd call it a lot worse than that if I wasn't talking to such a large audience. I mean, you want to talk about some of the biggest BS of the 21st century. What happened in North Carolina? So that becomes more the norm now, though. North Carolina just says, hey, we were ahead of the curve, guys. Our guys not going to class. We've been doing this for 20 years. Now everybody at LSU goes, hey, Joe Burrow, come on down here. Online, 2 years. You want to know what a pro quarterback looks like when he's playing in a college offense? His name was Joe Burrow. He didn't have the same responsibilities that Joshua Dobbs did, staying up till 2 a.m. the week of the South Carolina game for an aeronautics test. He doesn't have the same responsibilities that Jake Fromm has going over to the elementary school to read to students, because that's what Jake Fromm does for fun when he's not helping disadvantaged people or going to class, or riding a scooter around campus to get from one class to another. All right, Joe Burrow was online classing it, not going to any classes. Is that not an advantage? We talk about a level playing field. Give me a break. It's not. This won't be a level playing field either. Some schools are going to be better equipped to handle the new provisions that are in place. And the NCAA's got a lot of them. Now, I will say this. Kirby Smart, a month ago, almost a month to the day yesterday, was on Feinbaum's show saying, you know what, you're going to have temperature taking, you're going to have quarantining. I go, wow, that's a pretty interesting concept. I could see that. 1 month later, the NCAA chief medical officer pretty much says the same thing. Kirby way, way ahead once again. Georgia already has these plans in the works. Anthony Dasher, UGAsports.com, wrote a story a couple days ago. They were the first to have it, that the UGA medical team was talking about all these scenarios, and one of them was quarantining the guys on the Georgia campus, on the hotel on campus. So that's what's coming in July. And then what comes next is how do you, everybody's working on how to get the students on campus. Remember, Greg Sankey says, yes, indeed, we do have to see students on campus. But Greg Sankey has also said it doesn't have to be business as usual. Regular students now will be doing more virtual learning. There will be more social distancing. There will be more video, right? And less in the classroom. That's going to be the transition as we go from now to the new norm. How do we get from now to the new norm? That's how we get from now to the new norm. But I really want to harp on this point about what's safe. I really want to get to what's safe. When people go, you can't bring the kids back on campus until it's safe. That's what I want to get to. I want to know how that's any more dangerous than them staying at home and going to the mall and going to McDonald's and going in public places in their hometowns. How is being on campus, if you're a college student athlete, how is that more dangerous? Where you have medical personnel 24/7, controlled diet, controlled facilities, controlled environment. How is that more dangerous than not being on campus and being at home? What's really more dangerous? That's what I want to know. Because, I remember Gene, about, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think you guys were the first ones that I talked to about this. I talked to Gene Stallings. Gene Stallings is like the godfather to me. When I've got a question, right? You guys know like levels of questions. Like you got your mom level questions, your dad level questions, and your grandpa level questions, or your uncle, or whatever, your expert, your go-to guy. When you got a question and you need the highest authority, the mountain, you're willing to climb the mountain to talk to the oracle. Gene Stallings is that guy for me. You know why? Because not only was he a great coach himself, the man coached under Paul Bear Bryant and Tom Landry. To me, the greatest coaches of their era. Paul Bear Bryant and Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys. It didn't get any more straight up than those cats, man. And Gene was a player for the Bear at A&M, the whole Junction City. Gene's seen it all. Coached in the NFL, won an... Anyway, I go to Coach Stallings. I don't know how, 80-some years old now. Still on his ranch in Texas. Call him up. Coach, Mike Griffith here. Hey, man, Mike, how you doing, man? I say, Coach, good, man. I got it. What is your take? I had just talked to Vince Dooley the day before, and I got this awesome story. And Coach Dooley had this great idea about spring games and playing, like, how are we going to make up for this lost revenue? And Coach Dooley said he had an idea back in the 80s of bringing another team into Sanford Stadium and playing like a scrimmage and selling tickets. And I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. I mean, we see basketball do it. We see baseball do it. Anyway, I talked to Vince Dooley about this. Vince Dooley had told me about this Saturday Evening Post case with Alabama in 1960. Gene was on Paul Bryant's staff. I wanted to know a little bit about the Alabama side of that story because Coach Dooley told me the Georgia, you guys know what I'm talking about? Georgia fans, they'll really go deep here. Do you know, remember the 1960 Saturday Evening Post deal with Paul Bear Bryant and what was it, Butts? I think, was that the AD? Okay, y'all know that story? All right, so anyway, I was calling Gene Stallings and say, hey, Gene, what was up with this? Is this why you ran up the score on Georgia in like 1995? Because you didn't run up the score on anybody. But you did that year. It was like, what was it, 31-0? Because I was covering Alabama, and I remember thinking, what the heck? Alabama doesn't run up the score on anybody. No, Mike, that wasn't what it was. Yeah, sure it was. But anyway, what he said, when I asked him about COVID-19, I said, what are your thoughts on this, Coach Stallings? And his thoughts were the same as Kirby. He said, well, the first thing is I'd be worried about taking care of my players. And that's the same thing. Philip, do a Google. Philip Jordan Wells, okay, you don't remember 1960. Do a Google, 1960, Alabama, Georgia, Saturday Evening Post lawsuit. Trust me, fascinating story. Anyway, so he said, first thing, Mike, I am concerned about my players. If I'm a coach right now, that's my first concern. And I believe as a coach and as a program that I could do a better job taking care of my players than leaving them out there scattered across the country. And I said, absolutely, he could. So what are we waiting for? Well, what we're waiting for is the other students to get on campus, because it just doesn't look right if you just have student athletes on campus, but not all the other students. Then you go, well, look at this. You're giving them benefits that other students don't have. Okay, they already have benefits that other students don't have. You don't believe me? Go try to get into the Georgia weight room sometime. Go try to get in their indoor facility. Try to get in their academic learning center. See how easy it is for you to sign up for tutors. Go try and eat some of the food at their meal. They already have advantages. This whole thing is a charade. But I get it. Politically, you got to have students on campus. It's already been said. It's already been done. The die has been cast. So that's what's going to happen. So my thoughts on this as we move forward. Students will be on campus. I told you about $24 billion of lost revenue if there's no football season. Okay? Students will be on campus. There'll be a football season. Now, one of the things that this NCAA, and let me make sure I got his title right. I want to make sure I get his title right. NCAA Chief Medical Officer Brian Hanline. That's his name. Brian's got 3 phases. He identifies these 9 core principles of resocialization. Basically, how are we going to introduce students and student athletes back on campus, and things like making sure that there's proper testing in place, that medical personnel has the right equipment. It's just like a checklist for the ADs to go through, right? Like George has already gone through all this. There's 3 phases of it. Right now we're in phase 1. Phase 2 is the tricky part. How do you get moved back on campus? And then phase 3 is kind of when like they're back to normal. But there's got to be at least 2 weeks between phase 2 and phase 3, which sets up a return to campus for the middle of July. So if George is on schedule to return in the middle of July, and they have that 2-week re-socialization period where we're talking about them being quarantined on campus, then how coincidental or how planned out would it be that there's 2 weeks before phase 3, which is the on-campus movement, August 1st, and season starts on time. Now, all of this is based on projections staying the same as they are right now. We've got a lot of states opening. Georgia's one of them. And we don't know what the numbers are going to say. We don't know what the numbers are going to do. We're not really sure how much of a surge there will be in COVID-19 cases. And of those cases, what is the death rate? What is the ventilator? We all know so far that pre-existing conditions are a big factor. But we're still learning about it. We're still wrapping our arms around it. There's still medications that are being approved, treatments being approved. There's a lot left to learn, and as Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, has told us throughout the whole process, we learn as we go. We build the bridge as we cross the river. No hard and fast decisions need to be made right now, and I'm not saying that we should make any hard and fast decisions right now. I'm just saying that plans need to be in place. Provisional plans need to be in place. If you got any shot at all of returning on time, then you better have a plan to return to campus. You know, Myra Herbert Bush says, keep players away from other students. Here's the thing. If they're at home, do you keep them away from society? Are they just going to sit in their house and not talk to people? I mean, I was on the Georgia campus yesterday. I hate to break it to you. They ain't social distancing. They're not. And if I was 20 years old, I can't say what I would do. I don't want to say I'd be irresponsible. But I was jumping out of airplanes when I was 20, so draw your own conclusions. What do you think? You think I'd have been social distancing? Would you have been social distancing 19? If you look at the numbers and you look at the percentages, are you social distancing if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22? Now, the responsible person says, well, yes, because then I have to go back to my grandma, you know, or my mom. Or okay, well, if you're on campus, you don't. You're living with other kids. Again, safer on campus than back home. That's my argument that nobody's talking about. Nobody's talking about that. Moving forward. One of the things that the NCAA chief officer basically said, the quote was, this is the money quote for the fans. I think realistically having a football game with 90,000 fans, that would take a remarkable turnaround in a short period of time. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean no fans in the stands? I don't think it means no fans in the stands, but I think it means restricted fans in the stands. And if we're going to go in order, obviously you're going to have all the staff support and personnel there, right? They got to be on the field. So who's going to be in the stadium? You got to have, let's face it, the people that pay the checks are the boosters. Those luxury suites, there's going to be people in the luxury suites. Money talks. It's easier to control it. There's going to be the big donor. They're going to get in the stadium. The kids' parents are going to be in the stadium. And I think the students, I think that one of the things that the SEC especially is conscientious of are the student sections. Now, sometimes that bites these schools. And that doesn't just happen in the SEC. It happens all over the country. You'll go to the game and you'll see a sold-out stadium and you'll see a bare spot and you'll go, look at that. There's probably 2,500 seats there. Yep, student seating. They didn't come to the game. Oh, but they'll fight for it. We got to have our seats. But then they don't show up. I'm not getting down on millennials. They're not even millennials anymore, are they? Isn't it like a new generation now? Got to get that green tea going. But I do think that they'll make provisions for students. I think there'll be restricted media. I've been a part of auxiliary seating when I've gone to cover national championship games before as a non-beat writer. Like, you know, I guess I was at the Florida Tebow Sam Bradford game. What was that, 2005, 6? I can't remember. I wasn't a beat writer for either team, so they had auxiliary seats for the media. It was like sitting out there in the stands, like a covered portion. They put I think you'll see more of that distancing, and I think you'll see a gradual return of fans to the stadium with these provisions in place. So that's kind of how I see that coming back. There's going to be a lot of newness. You know, while we've all been battling COVID-19 issues and thinking about philosophies, and some people saying, you know, hey man, I'm going back to life, and other people saying I'm quarantining. My advice, by the way, is to be measured, is to use common sense. That's my advice in general, right? My dad would always tell moderation is key, Michael. That would be his advice. Dad, what do you think about moderation is key, Michael? Moderation, common sense, right? Pick your spots. But think about the other newness that we're going to be dealing with college football this season. How about all this legalized betting? Legalized betting had just taken off. I mean, it had just gotten rolling. You know, there's websites out there hiring people to write about online betting. And, I mean, this is going to, bam, smack. Like, this was a big issue at spring meetings last year. We're not even talking about online betting. We're like, that's the least of our concerns. But online betting is going to be there waiting for us. Alcohol in the stadiums. Will Georgia go to that this year? I don't know. Right? I don't know. Go ahead, make your joke, say, yeah, we could all use a drink now. Well, probably. I'm drinking green tea, whatever you're drinking. But alcohol in the stadium, this is kind of new to the SEC, right? And now that revenue, that extra revenue that's producing, it's turned out like, wow, that's good. Good for them, you know, especially if they can continue to police it and control it, and there's not more issues. I was skeptical of that. I was not an advocate of that. Just in full disclosure, I'm very protective of the SEC environment. I think the SEC has something very special in place. It's a 4-generation sport. Something big like landed on me, and ever since I read about the new Hornet, it's not a Japanese Hornet, is it? Did you guys see like the Super Hornet stories? Like something ran into me, and now I'm a little concerned. Now I got the chameleons on my house running interference, keeping the wasp away from me. Like their friend, I took a picture one the other day. I'm like very fond of these things since I learned that they like eat wasp nests and things like that. So I'm counting on them like keeping these giant hornets away. But when something big buzzes into me, it makes me kind of nervous. Something that did not happen last month, that we thought was going to happen, is the automatic one-time transfer. It got voted down, right? We all thought, oh my gosh, everybody started to think, there's going to be this free one-time, thank you, Jay Harwell, the murder hornet. Yeah, that's what was I thinking? I can't wait till I see one of those things, confront one of those. I finally won the battle with the ants. I don't want to, and I got the chameleon saving me from the wasp around the house. I don't know how to deal with these murder hornets. So no one-time transfer. I don't think it would have hurt Georgia as much as it would have helped Georgia. Now, I could, some people say, well, sometimes you get kids on campus and things don't go their way. They want to transfer out, and you need to learn to stick it out and all that. Listen, the guys that want to leave, there's more guys that would want to come to Georgia and win a championship than 4 and 5 stars that come to Georgia and say I'm cutting out early. Because the guys that Georgia's getting right now put a priority on winning a championship. They want to be a part of a championship program. If they want to play early, they're going to go somewhere else. Georgia makes it possible to play early and win a championship because they play a lot of guys on defense. That's why you could have the #1 recruit in the nation in Nolan Smith, and he doesn't start, and he's fine with it. Because you got Nolan, the #1 recruit in 2019. You got Jermaine Johnson, the #1 JUCO recruit in 2019. And then you got Azeez Ojulari, who was one of 7 finalists for Freshman of the Year as a redshirt freshman. That's Georgia's 3 deep at OLB. And they're good with it because they share snaps and they realize, hey, I can play. I don't need to play 1,000 snaps and have 100 tackles to make my way into the NFL. I just need good film, and I can still win a championship and keep my legs fresh. And it's like, yeah, let's do that. And so that's what the defense does. They had 37 different guys that played more than 100 snaps on defense last year. So that's what they do. So the fact that the one-time transfer rule didn't pass, I don't think it really, if anything, I think it would have helped Georgia, because then somebody goes, oh, hey, you need an experienced receiver. Remember Lawrence Cager last year, for example? Cager comes, Eli Wolf comes, graduate transfers. You could have seen some other one-time transfers that could have said, hey, you don't have an established slot receiver, I'll be your guy. Instead, Georgia's got like this crop of really talented freshman receivers coming in that are going to have to step up and play right away. Or you're going to need to see Demetrius Robertson, Matt Landers, Tommy Bush, and Kieris Jackson take it to the next level. Something's got to happen there. Playing time is at a premium. Anywhere you go, any championship program. I see Lindsey Vaught join the program. Talk about playing time. I actually coached softball for a while. This was a player came on my program. She wasn't the best. She stuck with it. She became one of the best pitchers in the region. Instead of quitting and going to a lower ranking like rec team, stuck it out with my team. I'll never forget that girl. And I see players at this level. Here I am, 12 years later, covering a championship level program, and I'm seeing players doing the same thing, right? But somehow a 12-year-old girl was way ahead of the curve and did that 12 years ago. What college football players do now and say, you know what? I'd rather stay with a championship program and put myself around better talent and get better. So that's what's happening at Georgia. That's what happens around the best programs. And the players get better when they play with other players around them. They challenge themselves. A lot of times people on the outside looking in goes, why would this guy go here when he knows that they've got running back 1, 2, and 3? Well, because this guy here recognizes that he wants to be as good as 1, 2, and 3. And if he's on the same team and he goes through the same drills and he competes with them every single day in practice, that improves his odds of being as good as player 1, 2, and 3 versus going to program B where you walk through the door and you're the best guy on the team and there's nobody to challenge you every day. And you know that if you're late for the meeting, you're still going to start that weekend. And you know if you cuss somebody out on video, you'll still be back on the team. This stuff happens in other programs. Not so much at Georgia. Not so much at Alabama. You don't always get a second chance at the great program because there's somebody just as good waiting to fill your shoes. That's just how it goes. Myra, I don't do Red Bull. I did tell people Friday night that it is possible for me to have too much caffeine on sweet tea. But this is not a caffeine high. This is a Jacksonville game high. And the Georgia fans will know what I'm talking about. I get talking about Georgia playing this game in Jacksonville, just right up in smoke. Just lights a fuse, man. The thing that I was thinking about today was the pay or play, which is going to start a year in fall of 2021. If you looked at the story, there's a story out there, kind of the schedule, like have some rules in place by October, have them approved in January, and have this in place for name, image, likeness pay by the start of 2021. How does this change recruiting? I think exposure becomes part of recruiting. For example, Kirby's got a rule right now where freshmen don't talk. I think that rule is going to be out of here. Because whether Kirby wants him to talk or not, now, if you're a great player, like a Nolan Smith, for example, you're going to have an agent that's marketing you. Nolan Smith, the #1 recruit in the country in the 2019 class. By 2021, he'd have a deal in place if he was the #1 player in the class going into the 2021 season. He would have an agent, and he would have a deal for his Twitter account. He would be doing his own tweets. He'd be doing his own video. And advertisers would be buying it. That's what's coming soon to a social media stop near you. Nolan did a video with a Savannah television station on Friday, and I aggregated it. But in the future, there's going to be a Gatorade logo on that, or there's going to be a Puma logo on that, or there's going to be I don't know, somebody said Red Bull. There's going to be a logo on those interviews in the future, and they're going to be on their own social media channels. So that's going to be one of the changes that we're going to see in the future. Saw Brandon Adams had a very good column today, and Brandon was talking about Todd Monken's view of balance. So I wanted to read that to you. And Todd Monken's quote from last year on balance was, Todd Monken is the new Georgia offensive coordinator. I think balance is multiple skill players touching the football. It's not just run pass balance, it's do you have enough skill players where they can touch the football? Is running the football important? Sure. Because in order to win, you've got to be explosive and not turn the ball over. How do you become explosive? You space players out, throw it over the defense's head, or throw it intermediate. He's going to spread the field. Kirby's definition of balance, and here's what Kirby said about it. Kirby's definition of balance last year was being able to run or pass the ball effectively, not numbers. That's how Kirby torqued his definition last year to fit what Coley was trying to do. But this was the money quote from Kirby I took from 2 years ago. Our offensive identity. We've got a set of plays, our core belief that we always have, which is balance. Being powerful, being able to run the ball at our will, not somebody else breaking our will. That's always going to be the identity we have. From the book of Kirby. Chapter 3, verse 1, the book of Kirby. We've got a set of plays, our core belief that we always have, which is balance, being powerful, being able to run the ball at our will, not somebody else breaking our will. That's always going to be the identity we have. That is straight out of the book of Kirby, folks. So there could be some changes to the Georgia. There will be some changes to the Georgia offense. They will be more open. They'll be more versatile. But I thought this was interesting too. So Kirby's a little worked up. And a couple of times we saw that during the virtual G-Day game and in a couple of his interviews when he's talked about quarterbacks and having to win a job for Jamie Newman. He knows he's got to compete. I went back to quotes from last year in the preseason, and Kirby's quote was, Kirby last year, let me find this quote, sorry about that. Kirby last year was, we have a quarterback coming back who should be a 3-year starter. Number one, that's the first indicator of success. When you have someone that can lead your offense and put you in the right plane and make good decisions. That's what Kirby said last year. Kyle, thanks for the compliment on the Army service. That was my pleasure and something I needed to do to grow up, just like the little sidebar. Kirby this year, we don't know what we got at quarterback. So the head coach is buzzing about the quarterback right now. But I just thought it was funny. Last year, Kirby's like, but Kirby did say during the G-Day game, if you had Jake Fromm coming back right now, you'd feel a lot better because you know what you have on offense. There's going to be a leap of faith some point. Kirby's going to have to take a leap of faith into this new offense, into Todd Monken. I think that's where Matt Luke helps out tremendously. I think Matt Luke is that guy. that really kind of serves as the buffer. So I want to go to your questions, your comments. Appreciate the audience tonight. It's been a fun show. I always like to interact. So Kyle Folds says he appreciates my service. He's the son of a 6'6", 230 recruit who traded a UGA football helmet for a U.S. Army during World War II. Wow, the ultimate sacrifice, man. Those guys are the heroes. Let me tell you, when I served and I saw those guys with those CIBs, you know, we know CIB means Combat Infantry Badge. When I saw those guys that had gotten on 130 and gone to war, or the guys that had served in Vietnam, whole nother level. Guys that go overseas, whole nother level, man. Listen, I'm a peacetime guy. I didn't have to shoot a gun at anybody. I was fortunate to serve when there wasn't a war going on. I was prepared to go. I was ready to die for the flag on my shoulder. 3 years full time, and I got the GI Bill, and I thank the country and the citizens for funding programs like that, because I wouldn't have gone to college without that GI Bill. So that made a difference in my life, and I'm eternally grateful to our armed forces, and whoever the president is, I'm going to support them, because I still look at that as my job. I haven't agreed with all the presidents, I'm going to be honest with you, but I support them because that's my job as a citizen. That's how I look at it. Now, different people got different takes, and I respect that. You've got the right to have a different take. It's America. That's the freedom. That's what soldiers are willing to die for, right? To protect that freedom, but that's my take. And right now, I'm in a very unified state of mind. There's a lot of stuff flying out there. Political parties, division, and I'm like, look, man, we're all on the same team right now. Let's put all this junk aside and let's figure this thing out. Let's be as tolerant of others as we can. And if we disagree, just disagree. You don't got to post on the timeline. You don't got to call anybody out. It's a tough enough world right now as it is. Listen to me preach. What am I doing? You all know this already. This is like the best chat room I've ever been on, and I've been doing these Facebook Lives. I've done videos. I've done show. I go on TV and I go look at my Twitter timeline, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can only read half of them at a time, because some people are like, hey, Griff, you could stand to lose about 50 pounds, or man, did you sound dumb, or wow, how many verbal pauses can you have in 3 minutes? And I start thinking, oh my gosh, do I look bad? Let me go back and did I go too many? You know, what did I say that? You know, social media kills you on TV. Other chat rooms I've been in, I go back in there and I go, oh my gosh, I'm glad I didn't read that during the show. It would have made me, but this is the most polite, professional, and courteous chat room on the internet, bar none. And that's a tribute to the Dog Nation crowd. It's a tribute to the audience that Brandon Adams has built. And we appreciate you guys, man, because it's a tough time for us as we do our jobs. You might say, well, there's not a lot to write about. There is. You just got to look a little bit harder. It's a different kind of story. But time and time again, our audience is coming back and interacting with me on this show, whether it's Tuesday at noon, whether it's Friday Night Mike, or whether it's the Sunday night on the beat. And it makes me look forward to this. Yes, you hear kids. I'm in my backyard. My neighbors think I'm crazy, Myra. I'm waiting for somebody to knock on the door and say, shut it down. You're too loud, and we don't even like Georgia football. But in my neighborhood, it's like, and I don't know. I actually did this the other day. Maybe this is weird, but I just started to notice a lot of these cement bulldogs on the doorstep of people. Like, this is a thing in Georgia, is like the concrete bulldog. You know what I'm talking about? So I thought, you know, what percentage of the houses have the bulldog, whether it's the little bulldog or the big bulldog, and if they had a bulldog flag, I give them credit for that. But what percentage of the houses in my neighborhood have the cement bulldog in front of it? It's 30%. And I went to the neighborhood across the street, it was 24%. And then the neighborhood down the block that I also walk in, that was 25%. So we're talking about between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 neighbors that have a bulldog on their doorstep. Chad Williams says you live in Texas and they have that. It's probably not a bulldog though, right, Chad? Is it like a bevo? That'd be like a big statue, like a big bullhead or something. I don't know. Like I've seen the flags, you know, people fly their flags, you know, my mom and dad live in Phoenix, you know, and they're one of those kind of retirement, a lot of nice houses and stuff around it, and everybody flies their flag, and that's cool. You know, they fly the flag for whatever team I cover, which is pretty funny, because my mom's like just now learning college football. She loves Jake Fromm. Like, she can't get over that Jake Fromm has left. Sorry, Mom, Jake Fromm's gone. But, you know, she loves, you know, she doesn't really understand things. I thought Kirby said, you know, okay. That was like last season. But whatever team I'm covering, they're going to read about. That's the kind of support that I get from my parents. I appreciate that. Dad went to Illinois. He's an Illinois fan, but they've been bad at football for a long time, so I think he gave up on them a long time ago. Oh, it was great having a dad that was a drug dealer. Yeah, pharmacist. Retired pharmacist now. So, what else we got here? Steve's got the concrete dog. Now, here was the other question, okay? More concrete dogs or more red pickup trucks? Huh? Red pickup truck, concrete dog. It's pretty close. All right, now the black pickup truck, I guess I should count those if they got a bulldog sticker. It's kind of a thing. Jim Page has got the 3 dogs. I love this, man. That's what I love about college football. I love the concrete dog. And in Tennessee, there's no reason to have orange unless you're a Vol fan. And there's more orange up there that it's like you got to put the sun. It's like, are you blinding you? Like, really? If there's orange here? I mean, and in Alabama, like everybody's got an Alabama license plate, right? Or a sticker. You know, you hear Roll Tide every day, right? But those Auburn fans, they're so fired up that even though they don't have the numbers, the ones that are Auburn fans, they try to recruit you. You know, are you an Alabama and Auburn fan? Well, actually, I work for the newspaper. Well, then you need to be an Auburn fan. They work really hard. They're always recruiting people at Auburn. You know, Florida, they don't seem to care. Florida, I think, has an arrogance that, you know, they don't really need any more fans. They don't need you. Gator fans, they don't need you. They're not looking to recruit you. So the branding, the G, right? Everybody likes that G. They talk about playing for that G. And even when I was watching QB1, I saw like Bishop Gorman and they had like the G on like that G. But is it a Green Bay Packer G? I don't know. What came first? I need to do my research. I'm the beat guy. I should know the story of the G. I should look this up. The next time I do the show, I will know the story of the G. That's my responsibility to bring you the story of the G. So I'm going to try and do a better job with that. So I apologize. I'm asking you guys that when I should be telling you that. Honestly, I get so spoiled by this fan base, though. Georgia fans are so knowledgeable. I can throw a question out there and people will be like, yep, I can tell you that, Mike. I was there that game. I can tell you exactly what happened. They love the program. It's like that at Tennessee. It's like that at Alabama. It's like that at Auburn. That's what makes SEC football special. That's what makes it a part of our culture. It's what makes it a part of our life. And that's okay. When I was covering Michigan State, after Michigan State went to the Rose Bowl, Mark D'Antonio was trying to drum up some support for the spring game. Now, the spring in Michigan is obviously a lot different than the spring in Georgia, although last year's spring game was freezing and cold and not fun here. But he wanted to get 50,000 people there. And I was doing a radio show at the time. This was like 4 years ago. I was doing a radio show at the time called The Spartan Beat. And I was telling everybody, hey, man, y'all need to get on board. Coach D wants 50,000 people at the spring game. And I had somebody, oh, this is great. Look, somebody's telling me they did a paper. They had to get permission to use the G. Look at the knowledge, man. Like I told you, snap, boom, I throw it out there. Georgia fan, here it is, pouring the knowledge on you. There was another columnist in town and said, you people are sick to go to the spring game. What kind of losers go to the spring game? And I'm going, what don't you understand about this? And why are limbs snapping in my backyard? Is that going to, I can't see past the light. There's something big out there. There are limbs. Squirrels do not snap limbs. That's got to be a raccoon, right? That's got to be a raccoon. That's the only thing that would snap limbs. Because deer are smart enough that they're not going to snap limbs and run into things back there. Raccoons would snap limbs. Got to be the raccoon. Maybe no, possums. No, certainly not. Spring game. They said I was crazy. Griff, you're nuts. I said, no. The spring game is a show of power. The spring game tells the recruits and the football community what you believe about your program and that you are crazy and that you do love it because you want to go see the second string, the third string guy, and you want to show out for those recruits that are there that are looking around the stadium going, do I see myself here? You know, and for Michigan State to get 50,000 in a spring game, let me tell you, they'll be lucky if they get 50,000 for a Mel Tucker game. You know, even once normal returns, because they're going to be bad for a long, I mean, gosh, did I just say that? They're going to be bad for a long time. They kind of had their run. But anyway, the spring game is part of the society. It's part of the culture. Now, there have been studies done, and some people say it had to do with the Civil War. I say, no, wait a minute. That's too long ago. I will say this. Remember, born in Mobile, raised in Michigan, moved back down south, raised my kids here. The folks in the South, let me tell you, they know their Civil War history. You want a lesson on the Civil War? You talk to a Southerner sometime about the Civil War. Oh, they will tell you about the Civil War. They know the battles. They know the history. They know the cause. They understand the North. Like, oh yeah, I guess I read a little bit about that. No. Down here, yeah, they know it. Oh yeah, and they should, of course. Now, I think the Civil War theory that the South never got over losing, whatever. Now, I don't buy that, but I do buy this: the theory of Alabama football that had to do with the Equal Rights Movement in the 1960s. And when you turned on the national tube, and it was one of three stations, the South, in Alabama specifically, in some cases, and you history folks know this, it wasn't a good look. It was, the world was moving in a different place, and it was not a smiled upon place. But by gosh, they had their football to be proud of. That was one thing that they could be very proud of, and behold. And so that paper has been done in the state of Alabama. That paper has been written and rewritten, and that theory has been floated. Now, that was the 1960s, right? And I do believe the world has changed. We need more change. We're constantly evolving, hopefully getting a better place. And I think that's probably less of a factor now, but I still feel like the SEC has a different pride in the brand. And people make fun of it. Oh, everybody's chanting SEC. Yeah, you don't get it. Like, the only people that laugh about that are people that aren't in the SEC, that don't understand it. Like when I went back and covered Michigan State, people were like, "Oh, Griff, you're an SEC guy. You were down there 20 years." I'm like, "Look, I covered the SEC. They care. They're just more passionate, guys. They don't let the politics get in the way down there of football, because let me tell you, SEC high schools have spring football in the South. There's no spring football in the North. It's just now starting to come around, right? So to me, it's a part of the culture. And I think people should be proud of that and accept that. That's cool, right? There's other countries that love soccer. Does that mean they're crazy? No. I mean, they like soccer, right? I mean, they're different. Canada likes hockey. Okay, I'm not down on Canadians for that. They love their hockey. In the Midwest, you've got a lot of big cities, a lot of pro cities. And so what that does is it stratifies the audience. So like, for example, in Michigan, right? You got the Pistons, you got the Lions, you got the Red Wings, you got the Tigers. You got Michigan State, you got Michigan, you got Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan. Stratified. What do you got in Georgia? Georgia Tech, Georgia Southern. I guess we'll count Georgia State. Falcons, Braves, Hawks. What do you got in Alabama? Alabama, Auburn. What else? Right? So because you don't have that stratified audience, there's more put into those programs. And there's more passion. And it represents your region. And it still does. And that's okay. And that's cool. And if you take pride in it, good for you. We've all got to believe in something, man. There's people, now that we've got social media and the internet, you can go on you'll see, man, look at this person. That's got to be the biggest Grateful Dead fan I've ever seen. Or this has got to be the biggest Rage fan I've ever seen. These people travel all over the country to wear fluorescent stuff and dance around in the electric forest. And gosh only knows what else. That's what they're into. We're into college football. And that's all right. And that's cool. And it's a good thing to be into because it's a family thing. And it's largely tied into higher education. And that's good too. So this is good stuff. So when people get on me, you cover college football. Those yahoos. What do you mean those yahoos? I'm a yahoo. I'm passionate about this. I have dedicated my life to this. There is no Mike Griffith part 2. Okay, I don't get to do this again, man. I don't get to go back through and have another career and say, you know what? Next time I think I'm going to be a business writer. No. I chose to dedicate my career to covering college football. I chose to move around to cover college football. My kids were raised with a dad that covered college football. And they're knowledgeable about it. Even if they don't walk and talk it 24/7, that's dad's livelihood. That's my business, is college football. And specifically, the SEC is where I've invested. And glad that I have. And thankful, for this audience tonight. And thankful for the questions that I get. Santiago D says, if Carson wins the starting quarterback position and starts the whole year, what would be my bold prediction? Santiago, if Carson Beck starts the season, then something went very wrong with Jamie Newman, because guys do not transfer as grad transfers to a school unless they're going to be the starter. That would mean Newman is a complete bust, and I don't see it. The reason you go with Jamie Newman is he's 6'4", 230, and he's played in games. He's battle tested. Carson Newman is a talented guy. Even if you thought that Carson Newman was the guy, let's just say the scenario plays out like I think it will. My scenario for college football: middle of July, George is back on campus, living in this hotel, and quarantining the football players and the coaches. No media is allowed. Kirby loves that. Always keeps it dark. And they do that for 2 weeks. And then August 1st, they go, all right, we're in phase 3, and now we're going to try to have as normal of a fall football practice, and the season start. Even if it's week 2 of August, and Monken says, you know what, Kirby, I think Carson Beck might be our guy. Let's just play that out. Kirby's still not going with Carson Beck in the opener because he's a true freshman. And you don't go with a true freshman in the opener. I've seen this act before. It happened in Tennessee back in 2000. Casey Clausen, he was an early enrollee. And Casey Clausen was the best guy on the team in the spring. But they had Joey Matthews, a third-year sophomore, and they had A.J. Suggs from Powder Springs, Georgia. Remember A.J. Suggs from Powder Springs, Georgia? So Casey Clausen didn't start until October. I thought he was better against LSU. I don't think they would have lost in LSU if they'd have played Casey earlier in the game. But he was a true freshman. And so they waited till the Alabama game. Then they started him, and he made like 7 straight wins, right, for Tennessee as a freshman. So even if you thought he was the guy, you still would start him early, because there is something about being a true freshman. There's something about easing a guy in, getting him snaps, making sure that he's ready to handle the moment. And Jamie Newman, look, this is a guy that's right now being projected as a first-round draft pick. So you hear the branches snapping back there? I mean, this is kind of freaking me out, man. Like, we don't have bears, I don't think. So it's not that. We don't have bears in Georgia. We got wild hogs. It's not like some razorback is going to charge me anyway. Armadillos, it's got to be a raccoon. Got to be a raccoon. Got to be. What else we got here? The green tea is getting to me. No. So I didn't propose Carson Beck. Somebody asked me about Carson Beck. I don't think Carson Beck's going to start in the month of September. No, not tornadoes. We don't have any wind here. Who starts at wide receiver against Virginia, Jim Page wants to know. You know what? I'm on the Matt Landers bandwagon. I think Matt Landers is going to have a good season. I really do. Obviously Pickens, right? Pickens will be the go-to guy. I'm on the Matt Landers bandwagon. Kearis Jackson is kind of a team leader in that room. Remember in the book of Kirby, as I like to say, Kirby wants guys that can play away from the ball, guys that'll block. Kearis Jackson is that tough guy. Okay, so I'm going to go, as the starters in the first game, I'm going to go with Kearis Jackson, George Pickens, Matt Landers, and am I going to go 3 wide and 1 tight end? 3 wide and 1 tight end, and Trey McKitty at tight end. John Fitzmagic versus McKitty. Look, McKitty didn't come here to sit, right? He'll have to earn the job. I'm going to go with McKitty and those 3 receivers. That's my pick there. Joe Moody says the Bears. Jay Harwell says we do have bears in Georgia. Well, Jay, we don't have them in my neighborhood. There's no way. There's no way there's bears there. It cannot be a bear. Okay? Yeah. How's Blaylock recovering from his injury? Steve, last I knew, he's doing fine. Blaylock is reputed to be a very fast healer. Just remember, the kid had surgery in December. Right? So January, February, March, April, May. He's 5 months in. Typically, these guys aren't running for 6 or 7 months at minimum in contact. I don't, I almost want to say don't expect anything from Dominic Blaylock. I do think you'll get some value out of him later in the season, but when someone has gone through a traumatic injury like that, it's not just a physical process, it's a mental process. And, I sat in Lawrence Cager's apartment a year ago about this time, and we were going over Lawrence's career stats, and I said, all right, look, man, I'm looking at your stats here. You look like you had a pretty good freshman year. Yeah. Sophomore year, we had a knee injury. I thought I was back the next year. Man, I wasn't really back. Last year I was back, but we had quarterback. But Cager made it clear, and I saw it happen with Robert Meacham at Tennessee. You know, he ended up being a first-round draft pick, but he got injured knee. Next year wasn't the same guy. 2 years later was. And I just think it takes time. And we've seen that with Zamir White. Like, I don't think Zamir White looked like the Zamir White that was the #1 ranked running back in the country in the 2018 class last year. He just didn't. You know, he didn't show any vision. He ran straight ahead. He didn't look like any cutting. You know, but then in the bowl game, we saw some sparks, right? We saw a little bit more wiggle out of Zamir. That vision, the confidence was there. He got into a rhythm. He got enough carries to get a rhythm. So really eager to see how Zamir White comes along. Going to be very important for Zamir White to catch the football in this offense. To me, you know, when I look at the key position battles, and I'll probably write this story, but like I look at, because I wrote about Nolan Smith tonight, I don't know how many of y'all saw that, but so at outside linebacker, which is really just like a glorified defensive end in Georgia's 3-4 pass rush specialist, right? So Aziz won the job. I don't expect Aziz to lose that job. But listen, Nolan Smith was the #1 recruit in the country, like overall in 2019. And Jermaine Johnson, Superman, the more I see of this guy, the more I like. And remember, he had kind of an ankle last year. Jermaine's had a healthy offseason. You know, he's a guy that came from Last Chance U. You want to talk about somebody who knows how to work without people around him? That's going to be a heck of a position battle. Cornerback, DJ Daniel, I thought played really well last year. Eric Stokes, we did there. And Tyson Campbell. You got 3 NFL corners. So you can only have 2 start. So that's going to be a heck of a battle. And then you guys you keep asking me about wide receiver. That's going to be a heck of a battle. You know, Jim, does one of the freshmen wide receiver break out? I don't know. What is a breakout? What constitutes a breakout? The one thing I would say is that I think, and you heard me mention Monken's formula for balance earlier and how he talked about spreading the ball out, is other than George Pickens, I don't expect there to be a receiver with more than 500 yards receiving, maybe 600. To me, Matt Landers is the guy that could break out. And I know he's been disappointing, and I know he's had drops, but I'm going to tell you, that guy has the look of an NFL player in his uniform. And if he's willing to work hard, which I think he will, I think Cortez Hankton is going to push him. I think Cortez knows that he needs a good season out of the receivers. And I think you're going to see a lot of hard work in that receiver position. And Matt Landers is a guy that's got everything it takes to be a dominant receiver. And listen, I like Jermaine Burton. I know Jeff's very high on this guy. And I am too. You know, I talked with Terrence Edwards about Jermaine Burton, and Terrence Edwards loves this guy, predicts he's going to be an all-time great. So I'm high on Burton. He's a tough kid. I'm high on Justin Robinson. I like Justin Robinson, folks. 6'4", 210. This Eagles Landing program, academy, the more I found out about these guys, I was impressed. This is a great program, and Justin Robinson is a guy that had the benefit of that offseason workout. Now, it wasn't spring drills, but he did enough. Mike Gay wants to know about who's the speedy guy. You're talking about Arian Smith, the 6 foot, 185-pound speedster out of Florida. Yeah, he's going to be a flyer, you know, but Demetrius Robertson's a flyer too. That's a senior. So will that extra step in the 100 meters, is that going to make him that much better? Maybe. You know, hard to predict. The whole key here, though, is that there wasn't a spring, and we don't know how much of a summer and a fall lead-up they're going to have. And obviously that affects Georgia, because Georgia has a new quarterback and has a new offensive coordinator. And so what we do know about this Georgia offense, what we can safely predict, what I can absolutely guarantee you, is that it will be very simple. It will be simplified. And the complexities will come in the movements and the formations, not the plays. Not a lot of plays, but a lot of different formations and movements. That's the NFL book. That's the Monken book. That's what you're going to see. Not a lot of plays, but a lot of formations and a lot of looks. Okay? And then you build plays off your tendency. You find your core offense of 7 or 8 plays, and then you show that action and run a different play off of it. You self-scout. And that's what Georgia does as well as anybody. That's what Jake Fromm enabled you to do, was you had A to Z in playbook under Jake, and Jake had the power to change those plays at the line of scrimmage. So if you thought last year's offense was bad, as it was, just imagine if you didn't have a third-year quarterback that could call protections, do pre-snap reads, and get out of sacks before you even got in them. That's how valuable it was to have a third-year quarterback like Jake Fromm, you know, with that 36 Wonderlic and that processing and that ability to get through his transitions. you know, that was absolutely huge. So Georgia doesn't have that anymore. It's going to be more of an RPO team. You're going to see more plays that are, you know, going to be Jamie Newman reading it on the fly, reading certain defenders, or whether he keeps, whether he hands off, whether he steps back and passes. It's going to be a lot more simplified. How many yards rushing does Jamie Newman have this year, Mike Gay wants to know. He had, I want to say, darn near 500 last year. I don't have the stats in front of me. I guess I can look it up. Let's see. I think Jamie Newman, I want to say like 460 something or something like that. I can't remember. Let's look here. Jamie Newman's statistics. And he carried the ball like almost 200 times, but out of that like 182 carries, like only 128 of them were planned runs. Like some of them were scrambled. All right, let's see what Jamie did last year. Okay, 2019. Yeah, here we go. He had 574 yards rushing last year on 180 carries. He won't hit 500 this year. Part of the reason Jamie Newman's coming to Georgia is he wants to be in more of a pro-style offense. Part of the reason Georgia got Jamie Newman is they want a quarterback that'll run a little bit more. So those two sides are going to meet in the middle. Jamie's going to get to work with a former NFL coordinator in Todd Monken, whose Tampa Bay Buccaneers passing offense led the NFL 2 years ago. And Georgia's going to get a quarterback with mobility that can run more RPO. Jim Page, I'm with you on James Cook. Listen, James Cook needs to have a great offseason. I don't know what happened during the last season, but James Cook wasn't nearly as efficient as I thought he would be. I don't know how much of that is on Coley versus what did James Cook do behind the scenes. Was James Cook working as hard as Brian Herrien? Was he working as hard as Amir White? Was he getting things right in practice? I don't know the answer to that. And that's where sometimes we judge without knowing all the factors. You know, you heard me mention Gene Stallings, right, earlier in the show. So back in the day, 1990s, if you wrote something, like I remember I wrote a game story one time, and I said that Fernando Bryant got beat on this route. And Coach Stallings would meet with his beat writers after practice. He said, Mike, I need to talk to you when we finish with this interview session. Could you come to my office? We would meet in their coach's office. There'd be like this big long table. We'd all put our tape recorders in the middle of it. And Gene would tell, you know, what happened. And then sometimes he'd say, turn them tape recorders off. I'm going to tell you all something. You can't quote me on it. And we'd turn our tape recorders off, and everybody kind of looked around like, okay, nobody better write this, right? Nobody's going to scoop each other because Gene's not going to give us these secrets anymore if somebody breaks this trust, right? But so I go in his office afterward, and he hits this button, and the screen comes down out of the ceiling, and he said, now you wrote a story about Fernando Bryant getting beat on this touchdown. I said, yes, Coach, I did. Yes. And he goes, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what happened. And he ran the play. And he said, now look here. Fernando didn't have the deep responsibility, Mike. We had a safety. And he would explain it, and you'd go, oh, wow, man, geez. Ooh, you know, don't be sorry. Just be informed before you write it. Don't jump to that conclusion. And so I learned early on, you know, don't jump to that conclusion. Now, at Tennessee, I used to do this report card feature. And I do it at Georgia now. I do it on the fly right after the game. Just quick observation, my thought, you know, what I can read and what I can see. There's some things I go, well, I'll leave this out. At Tennessee, I would call the coaches on Sunday because I knew they'd break down film. I knew when they were done. I'd say, you know, I'd call John Chavis. Chavis, the defensive coordinator. He was at Arkansas last year. Probably a Hall of Fame assistant. And I'd say, you know, hey, Chief, man, linebackers. Oh, don't you give them an A now. Don't you guys? Yeah, but you got a shutout. Yeah, there was a sign, bro. And it makes me laugh because remember Kirby this year after the Kentucky game? They shut out Kentucky. What was the word that he used? What was the Kirby Smart quote after the Kentucky game? They shut out Kentucky 21-0. And Kentucky doesn't even complete a pass until there's like 5 minutes left in the game. And Lynn Bowden, the do-everything guy, didn't do anything. I don't know. He did something. I think he was held under 100 yards. But he didn't complete a pass. There was like 5 minutes left. What was Kirby Smart? What did he say about the defense after the Kentucky game? I'm trying to remember. They win 21-0. It's a shutout. Called him atrocious. Kirby Smart says his defense was atrocious after the Kentucky game. You just shut out Kentucky. 21-0. And Kirby Smart says they're atrocious. He says, This is what Kirby says after a 21-0 win over Kentucky last year. You can't judge defense based, number one, on statistics. You can't judge it based on a kid playing in the pouring rain that's not a quarterback. So we haven't been tested in that regard, and we got to get better, and that's what we're going to do this week. When you watch that tape, there's a lot more concern. Tackling, gap fits. If you went to a coach and said, watch this thing, they would come in and say, that is atrocious. Tackling fits, eye discipline, leverage, blockers, atrocious. So that's what it's like playing for Kirby Smart. Remember that tip I gave you last week? Yeah, I'm with you, Eric. Remember that tip I gave you last week about Kirby when he was asked, like, in the offseason? And I think I asked the question, hey, who are 5 guys that stood out, looked really good in the offseason? And all 5 of them were offensive guys. He ain't going to give no sugar to his defensive guys. So that's part of what's fun about covering Kirby Smart in Georgia. The bar is set here, right? So we started the show talking about other fan bases, celebrating recruiting rankings in May. You know, Georgia's not going to do that. Georgia's won 3 straight SEC East titles, and they finished in the top 5 last year in the nation. And right now, there's a chip on the shoulder that that's not good enough. Think about that. Put that into perspective. You had a team that finished in the top 5 in the nation last year. You had a team that went 5-1 against top 25 teams here at Georgia. You had a quarterback that was 36-7 and won a Sugar Bowl and a Rose Bowl and a college football playoff game and left the national championship game with the lead. And people are still saying that's not good enough. That is where Kirby Smart has set the bar. And for other programs, they're just not there. So let them celebrate a recruiting ranking in May. Let them celebrate a win over Indiana. Let them celebrate Kentucky and Lynn Bowden being the greatest ever, or Eddie Gran and a guy that Kirby talked to about a position, and the guy that leveraged that interview for an offensive coordinator raise. Let him play that game, okay? Because Georgia is in a different place right now. And while that's good, don't cheat yourself out of the satisfaction and enjoyment of having a great program. I say that as a former Denver Broncos fan. How many years did I go without John Elway winning a Super Bowl? A lot. I watched him lose to the Giants. I watched him lose to the Redskins. I watched him get embarrassed by the 49ers. But you know what? The Denver Broncos were a pretty doggone good football team. And I enjoyed being a Broncos fan. Back in the days of being a fan, right? So don't let it rain on your parade. And put things in perspective. And when other fan bases want to challenge you, say, yeah, man, that's cool. You know, November 14th. You know, see ya November 14th in Sanford State, Florida. See ya Halloween. See ya October 31st. You know, because Georgia right now the Alabama fans, look, they know you're coming. They know Georgia's coming. They know it. They know they were fortunate to win. Alabama fans are pretty smart. They know Georgia had those games won. Okay, Georgia beat themselves in those games. Couple breakdowns. Eddie better than Coley. I'm not sure who Eddie is. Eddie Gran better than Coley. I don't know. You know, Coley, I don't think it's fair to judge Coley just because that receiving core was just such a joke last year in terms of keeping people healthy. I mean, you lost your top 5 guys, and then you had 6 guys hurt, and you got different guys out there every week. And the game plan's not necessarily to run up big numbers. You got Pickens getting suspended for a half game here and a half a game there. Really didn't know the offense. That's why he didn't catch the ball against Notre Dame. Didn't enroll early. So I just don't think it's fair to judge James Coley. Ryan Sandberg. I'm excited about Todd Monken too. I'm excited about Todd Monken, Matt Luke. I'm excited about the combo because I don't think it's just Monken. I don't think it's just, Todd Monken's going to come in with the magic playbook. That's not how it works. You've got to evaluate the talent, and you've got to marry the playbook to, number one, your talent, right? Like when Kirby talks about formations, you want to know what the base formation is going to be? It's going to be the formation that's got the best group of players that moves the ball the best, right? It wasn't so much about Coley finding mismatches. Georgia wasn't getting mismatches, Eric. The receivers weren't beating press coverage. Lawrence Cager was the only guy that Jake could count on those option routes. So it really wasn't about Coley as much as it was players that couldn't get open against one-on-one. I'm with Ryan that Matt Luke is a home run hire, and absolutely Sam Pittman was an awesome coach, was a glue guy. Georgia still they're going to always miss an element of Sam Pittman. He's a warm, wonderful guy who recruited well and the players absolutely loved. But Matt Luke is special. I feel like great things are ahead for Matt Luke. I think Matt Luke will once again be a head coach someday, and I think Matt Luke will have great success someday as a head coach. And I hope that Georgia, for the Georgia fans' sake, can keep him around and have some continuity. I feel like Kirby and Matt are kind of really kind of on the same page. I just feel like these guys have a chemistry. Remember, they played in the SEC at the same time. They came from different worlds, though. You know, Matt Luke, was a guy that coached under David Cutcliffe. Or that played under, did he play under Cutcliffe at Ole Miss? No, he didn't play under Cutcliffe at Ole Miss. No, he played at Ole Miss in the 90s, in the early 90s, mid-90s, when Kirby was at Georgia. Matt Luke was at Ole Miss, and who was the head coach? Because Cutcliffe didn't go there till 1998. So who was the head coach at Ole Miss before Cutcliffe? Not Billy Brewer. Could he have been there? Was there a Jolie Dunn overlap? I don't have my Ole Miss. Some bug on there. Sorry. Man, sorry, I'm not big on bugs, so I'm not scared of them. I just don't like them on me, okay? And the light is, but anyway, the fact that Kirby and Matt are about the same age, and one's defense and one's offense, but the fact that Matt's also been a head coach, and the fact that Matt has had some success against Alabama, and so there's a real, Tommy Tuberville. Yeah, I think it was Tuberville. Good call. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. Don't really have any updates on Blaylock right now. We don't have the access to the players, so we don't really know. All signs are good. Looking at Dominic's social media, I think Jeff talks with his dad every now and then. So as far as we know, everything is fine. No red flags there. It's going to take time. So that's why I said you really can't count on Blaylock. You just can't count on it. Anything you get this year coming off of a knee surgery in December is going to be a bonus. So you can't really count on that kid. And you don't want to put that pressure and expectation on him, just like they didn't want to do that to Zamir last year. So anyway, listen, been a great show. I promised myself I wasn't going. My neighbor's probably going to bed. They just don't got school tonight, like kids. Otherwise, I'd probably have to shut it down. I'd see my name like on the neighborhood. You have the neighborhood association page, right? Like, so I've got a neighborhood association page, which I've never really been that involved with before. But because it's the pandemic and we're all at home, like all the neighbors are at home walking and like looking at each other and probably getting to know each other better than they normally would. So I posted there because I thought there were too many kids playing in the street, and I saw delivery trucks speeding in and out, people backing out of driveways, and I said, hey, do you know that if your kid is riding the scooter on the sidewalk at 10 miles an hour and somebody backs out, or a delivery truck, and the scooter, the little ground scooters are only 3 feet off? I said, so listen, like, this is my observation. This is what's happening. That was one of my posts. But the post lately, let me tell you where it gets nasty. When the people don't pick up the dog stuff on the walks, this is what tears neighborhoods apart. I'm convinced. This is what causes riots. People and the dogs and the stuff on the street and the sidewalk and not picking it up. I mean, I've seen the most mild, nicest, sweetest neighbors go ballistic over this stuff. And I mean, they lose it on the page. It's like, holy cow, was this person mad over some dog doo-doo? I mean, that is like that is going to break the neighborhood up. It is. And I try to keep things fun on the neighborhood page. The dog stuff, though, this is a real problem. Clean up after your dog. I don't have any pets. I travel too much to have pets. I wish I could have a pet. Someday I will have a pet again. Right now, I'm just, like I said, I'm happy with the chameleons on the house. I can name them. I don't have to feed them. They eat the wasps. We're cool with each other. I like them. They like me. If I could feed them, like if I could bring them chameleon food, I would. But the reality of it is they're doing just fine eating the bugs and the wasps that are trying to build nests. So I'm very cool with the chameleons, and they have a sentimental value to me. Kind of like the chameleons. It's a pretty cool animal, kind of like dinosaurs, right? They've survived all these years, sort of. So when it starts getting silly, it's probably time to stop. Joel Moody says, 2 biggest questions to me are who's the right tackle and who's the second best receiver. Right tackle. We heard Solomon Kinley threw out Notori Johnson for that. I'm more inclined. I don't know. I'm with you on the right tackle question. So you go left tackle, Jamari Salyer. Left guard, Justin Schaefer. Center, Trey Hill. Right guard, what do you got? Ben Cleveland, Warren Erickson. So maybe Erickson. I don't know who's the right tackle. Is it Xavier Truss? Does Broderick Jones come in? There's some questions there. They got talent. Plenty of talent there. What do I think of Jim Page playing left tackle or Jamari Salyer? I like Jamari there. I saw a workout video lately where I thought he looked a little better. He's been working out with Andrew Thomas. I think that's pretty big. Ben Cleveland doesn't really have the feet to play outside. He's got big feet. I still don't know what to expect from Ben Cleveland next year. I'm still not sure what we're going to get. Remember Ben? He's had the injuries. He didn't make it to the bowl game because of grades. I mean, that whole thing's kind of sketchy, and you just don't hear teammates talking about him. And is he in the mix? Is he out of the mix? I mean, I hope Ben Cleveland's back, because remember, we all thought Ben Cleveland would be like a road grader last year, and it didn't. You know, the foot injuries, it just didn't happen. So, you know, hope Ben gets his health back. Hope Georgia has Ben Cleveland to choose from. Guys, I'm going to shut it down. The bugs are getting crazy. I'm getting crazier talking about chameleons this late at night. So I'll be back Tuesday at 12:30. I'll have an On the Beat show. I'll have a special guest. I've invited a couple people. We'll wait and see who it is, and I will let you know. Brandon Adams will be back tomorrow with Dog Nation Daily at 10 o'clock on this channel. I'll have some story in some way, shape, or form. Connor Riley will have a story in the morning. Jeff Sentel's Intel. Had a nice talk with Jeff today about a lot of cool stuff. Jeff is, like, by far one of the coolest people that we all know. Just happy to be covering Georgia, man. Happy to get through another week with all y'all. Looking forward to what this week holds. And once again, very thankful that you joined me tonight. So everybody be cool. Like I said, keep your ear to the ground. Right? Stay positive. We're going to get through this. We're going to keep talking football. We got a long summer, long off-season football ahead. So have a great week, everybody. Thanks again.